Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Inner Game of Change. Today's episode is deeply meaningful as it features a conversation with the remarkable Carol Sanford. Carol has been a pioneer of regenerative thinking for over 4 decades, helping entrepreneurs and executives transform their businesses responsibly and meaningfully. Her work has left an indelible mark on so many lives and organizations. It is with a heavy heart that I share that Carol is now in transition out of this world, as shared by her son, Mark, 2 days ago. Despite the challenges of her illness, Carol was determined to share her thoughts and wisdom with me and all of you. During the recording, it was not easy for her to continue speaking, and after around 20 minutes, we had to bring the conversation to a close as she had given all she could in that moment. This episode is a testament to Carol's unwavering commitment to sharing her insights even in the face of immense difficulty. I invite you to listen closely as she shares her thoughts on the models, philosophies, and the profound lessons she has spent a lifetime teaching. This is a tribute to Carol's incredible legacy. May her courage, ideas, and spirit continue to inspire us all as we honor her remarkable journey. I am grateful that Carol has agreed to have a chat with me. Carol, thank you so much for joining me in the Inner Game of Change podcast. I am eternally grateful for your time today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Carol, in your website, it says most change theory and practices are based on false, error-filled, and unproven promises. Maybe that's a good start for us.
Okay. You have a specific question or just explain myself for having written that. If people check out my books, they'll see there are 3 or 4 things I constantly say are not true, but we keep saying they are. One is behavioral theory, the idea that humans cannot have inner work. The name of your podcast is The Inner Game.
Mm-hmm.
Behavior theory, but behavioral psychology says there is no inner process. Humans don't have one. They only have conditioning based on the external world, rewards and recognition. And so we can't bring about change like you're claiming you can here without others outside conditioning them. And so I would say right now, 95% all change is based on behavior theory. And you can hear it in people's language, they can't, like influencers and impact, right? Those kind of things are suggesting that from the outside, we can change other beings. Now, it's true that we can, but it's without developing people, they can learn to change themselves. So my advocacy is for people being developed that inner capability that because of behaviorism no longer gets developed. Every company has some kind of reward, recognition, incentives, all of which are behavioral theory. The other thing that is false theories is much of what happens in scientific method research, which we follow. People say, I want a fact-based or an evidence-based or a science-based. Well, there's more than one kind of science, and we have lost the connection to other sciences. So now we have scientific method which says kill something first, like kill the frog, dissect it into parts. Now, study one part while you hold everything else still, move one thing. So we have no systems thinking in that process. It's not dynamic, It's not dimensional, and it's not as though people change. I work with something called the science of wholes, and we've done this with nations, with corporations like DuPont and Google, where we work with looking at a whole moving in a system. And it comes from an indigenous theory and science, and also quantum science and wisdom sciences. So if we can't look at wholes, we can't look at anything living. We can only dissect it.
Yeah.
And that's where behavior theory actually came from also. The study not of humans and their frontal lobe capacity, but the study of animals, mostly dissected or using a study which had them only looking at one thing at a time. So that's a kind of an intro to it, but that's what that means on my website.
Carol, I'm curious to know what type of a client will come to you for advice, and what condition would they be in when they come to you and your team for advice?
Well, we don't give advice, and people don't come to me. So let me tell you how I get connected.
Mm-hmm.
I run an education institute that educates people, and they're using multiple companies in the room. Like right now, it's all online since I can't travel anymore. And it's all by referral. You can't even talk to me without a referral. And the reason is I want people to know what they're getting into. So I'll give you a chain of referrals to give me an example. So years ago, I was working with Keys for Charcoal, and we changed their ecological footprint, their marketplace, not only market share, but return on investment. They recommended me to Colgate. And so I went into Colgate, and we did that all over the world, including during the South African Revolution against apartheid. And they did so well, they recommended me to DuPont and also Google. All of these go one after another. And I never give advice, and don't ever take advice. I say to people, educate yourself to think better, and you can figure out what you need, and you will know your context better. So people at all different levels. I rarely work with brand new startups because they're so distracted they can't really, although we've had a few, and a few that have been written up in books and magazines. Once in a while, they're in terrible shape, like the bottom of their industry. But usually, they're doing okay, but they either want to do better to be able to grow the company, or they want to switch to living closer to some kind of mission or vision. And so they hear the stories about the folks I've worked with and want to do that. So they mostly, we say to them, well, what you're asking to work on is too small, and it's a part of something. So we have to shift them thinking about working on the whole of the business. And it doesn't have to be a whole company like in DuPont and Google. They had business groups join. You need a P&L so you can track, because we grow companies about 35 to 65% per annum for about the first 5 years. And you need the whole of a business. Like in DuPont, that when the whole company but it was 4 different businesses: sodium cyanide, Freon, paint group, and electronics group. Now, that takes quite a few years to make the change. The basis we work on is 3 to 5 or 8 years before, like DuPont was able to replace Freon and make it open source so that India and China didn't make Freoners and still have in the world, we needed it replaced. So it can take a few years to do big change. But the change starts to happen within about 6 months. It's pretty significant.
I'm very interested in your work, Carol. When you apply or you talk about applying the regenerative principles you promote in the education sector. And when I read your work, I really like the notion that the more we do at work, the better we influence society. And what I would like to know, how would an organization, and for example, the higher education, how would they look at your regenerative principles and apply them?
I'm not sure I know every detail about how to answer that, but again, I work as an education institute, not a consultant. So I don't go inside of the company. So I have a variety of different, like I have several people who studied with me in my institute who are heads of, like Stanford University and Harvard in a department. So the head of Stanford's, what they call it, management and engineering, has studied with me for 40 years. She's changing everything based on all this. Same thing is true with, I have people who had leadership groups in MIT and business change in DuPont, in Harvard. And I have a bunch of small companies. And what usually happens is, like in, what's the group, Saybrook and Glasgow University both have people who study with our institute, and they come in groups. We require 3 people minimum from a group so that they can work and develop together and then try and beat change. So I've had a few hundred university heads and lead faculty who have studied with us, and they sometimes use what I call the good side of the Chinese torture method, drip, 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 right, working on a focused way and how they teach, how they manage the courses, how they manage the institute. And quite a bit changes in about 3 to 5 years. So it's educate the educators.
That's a wonderful way to spread the message, is to actually educate the educators, and you create change champions or whatever you want to call them. I want to ask you, Carol, about, you mentioned something around allowing change to happen over a period of time. We come across organizations that just want things to happen in a few months. And somebody like you and, myself, I always know that change needs time to happen. So you did talk about your 3 to 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
The principle of time when it comes to implementing change and transforming an organization, How critical is that to embed change and see the results?
So I don't think change takes real long. I think to deepen it takes a long time. But like in South Africa, Colgate, we were there when Mandela came over Robben Island and became the president of the country. They mandated that the top of a company had to reflect the racial mix of the country, and it was mandated to happen within 5 years. People swore that there would be violence, and there was in most companies. In Colgate, we within 6 months reached that goal, where we had 95% Black Africans, where there'd been 95% white, and none of it was with a program to go after that directly. We educated people on how to run a company, and we were meeting very intensely. Every detail, well, not every, a lot of the details in my most recent book. We didn't tell anyone they had to change. We said, say-sos, the general managers, and I want to build a great country while we build a great company. So if you start with something bigger, which includes everyone, everybody wants to play. And we did it all with education, none with restructuring. If we've done that with every place we work, and within 6 months, major changes happen, but it won't get deep and permanent in 6 months. So every place, like even with Crown Saddleback years ago, one of my earliest clients, we took them in 1 year from let's see, what were they at? 24th out of 25 in their industry in revenue. So I think that when we say it takes a long time, people have the image, nothing happens, nothing, instead of it's building. So 3 to 5 years is a steady, or 3 to 8, I think it is. Harvard did a study, which I cite in several of my books, that it's like a layering. And if you know how to do it, a lot happens early, and you have momentum. And then you layer. I have 6 phases, which are not explainable in a short podcast, but they work as layers. To bring about change. And so there's one real disruptive opening that builds a shift in how you learn. And then there's a next shock to the system that builds a different way of making decisions. And then one that changes how they work with customers. And so it's not a long time to do applications. Every phase is applied immediately, not application taking 8 years. The phases are introduced and applied. So it's a very layered process.
Carol, I'd like you to educate me if I get this wrong. What you're saying is that change will always happen very quickly at the service level, but time only when you want to go deeper, which is the most important piece. And when you say, yeah.
The most important is nothing later. It's all at the beginning. I don't think about time at all.
Sure.
I don't think it's relevant. I think if you know how to educate people, you go faster than if you try and do what you're talking about, which is bring about change by restructuring and changing how people work. that will slow you down if you instead educate people and work on something huge, which is really important, something too big to do alone. It's all very fast. Nothing I've done is slow. I think the whole idea that it takes a long time and there are some things you have to build toward. The first things I do are quite disruptive. And once people are unstuck, you can be in education, but stop all the restructuring. That will kill the speed.
I understand. You've corrected me, so I get that. Can you please help me understand when you focus a lot on the word educating the business? Yeah. What does that mean to, like, if I want to explain that to my client, or if I want to apply it in my practice? What does that look like, Carol?
So the word I should be using in that instance is development. We start with developing people's capacity for managing their thinking and being able to observe what their sourcing is, what their reactivity is, how to see what's going on and the effects. And so education is a lot about inner processing, which we were stopped doing with behaviorism, where they did only external behavior management. So we go back to you have to believe that people can grow and change, not by incentives, but by self-direction. So the entire process is building a self-managing, self-determining, self-directed workforce where every individual can see the whole. And so we start with, in every case, using it in an applied way. So people come into sessions in natural work teams, not as individuals, and they go apply what we are doing with them immediately. We don't teach them what to do. We teach them how to think about it. And then they make choices and have other evaluation frameworks where they get better and better at thinking for themselves, and we're slowly moving away from traditional structures like top-down management, functional groups, supervisors, and delegation. In my third book, The Regenerative Business, there are 30 toxic practices. So we're slowly moving away from those and having people substitute their own design based on certain different kind of principles, not based on behaviorism, but based on self-determining capacity in humans. So that's what I mean by education. They're learning to think differently, but they're not learning what we think they should do, only how they get better and better at thinking. I'm just trying to get tired, so we're going to have to be careful in the use of time.
Sure, yes. I've got one last question for you, and I'm grateful for your time, Carol. What is the role of leadership when it comes to the way you want to educate or develop a business?
Leadership is a process, not a position, not a status place. Every restructuring has a leadership from everybody. 100% of people are in leadership positions. So, because everything is led by teams that are reflective of the whole, there's no hierarchy that has the name of leadership, no delegation. So, I took a bunch of DuPont guys to Kingsford one time. I use these examples because they're easy to see. And we were in a charcoal plant where there's a black dust everywhere. And the team I took from DuPont was TO2 titanium engineers and operators, which make all white powder. And they were in a room, I did a tour, and then they were in a room with a core team, which is what we call the leadership process. And they were asking questions, and we all got the van and left. And they said, why didn't their boss show up, or bosses? I said, well, they were in the room. They said, well, you couldn't tell who they were. I said, I hope you got that. It was about self-to-self conversation, not role to role, not authority to follower. And so I quit taking people on tours because the entire process changes it. So leadership is a process, not a title, not a job description. And people have self-determining capacity to initiate things. We call them promises that they make to customers, not to a boss. They have no development plans to the boss, only to the market and to customers. And they can be self-directed inside of a strategic plan with a team that's helping them do self-assessment of the effects in the market and on the business. So that's my leadership gets redefined.
Fantastic. I like this. I like that my promise is to the customer, and that should drive the way I behave and think in the workplace, and hopefully outside the workplace. I'm grateful for your time, Carol. I know we've been trying to get this up and going for a couple of times. However, I'm the most patient man on earth. So, and I'm always interested to hear the thought leaders like yourself. You're sharing your time with me, and I'm eternally grateful. We're going to put all your information in the podcast details, Carol, and I certainly will be promoting your work. I love all of these principles, and I hope I can, take 5-10% out of it and apply it in my way of thinking around change going forward, Carl. So that's my promise. That's my promise to you.
The key is to get in the education process, because people try and do what I say, and they don't spend time learning how to think about it. Like, I'm not a thought leader. I don't ever want to be called that. I'm a thinking person. You're a thinking person. I don't lead anybody else. And that is what gets us in trouble, thinking somebody's ahead of someone. So, Ali, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for your time. Until next time, Carol, stay well and stay safe.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you for listening to this deeply meaningful conversation with Carol Sanford. As I reflect on our chat, one of the most profound lessons that resonated with me is Carol's perspective on achieving lasting organizational change through the education of educators. Carol emphasized that patience is key, drawing from her experience with Colgate in South Africa. She showed us that true transformation isn't about quick fixes or superficial restructuring, but about nurturing self-management and decision-making capabilities within individuals. By cultivating a self-directed workforce, organizations can begin to dismantle traditional management structures in a way that leads to profound, sustainable change. Carol's insight revealed that real impact comes from focusing on developing how people think rather than merely dictating their actions. This shift enables teams to become self-leading and capable of understanding the whole picture, ultimately driving more holistic and meaningful workplace transformation. It is a powerful reminder that change is not about control. It is about empowering others to lead themselves. Thank you, Carol, for enduring wisdom and the legacy you leave behind. Until next time,